We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy. But also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender. All one word. But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is two words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Very special guest, America's Sheriff, Sheriff Joe Arpaio. We're going to be talking about what went on in Minnesota this week, its ramifications with regard to the police, our new organization called America's Sheriff, and you can go to it and see it at americassheriff.org, O-R-G, two S's in the middle, americassheriff.org. Very important. But let me tell you what's going on with Freedom Watch, with the country. Joe Biden, our alleged president, alleged because he was elected through fraud. I'll say it straight up, elected through fraud. So was Kamala Harris. They're subject to our citizens' grand juries. We're in our fifth session. You can see them at freedomwatchusa.org. If you want to participate in future grand juries, send me an email at leklayman@gmail.com. That's Larry Elliott Klayman, leklayman@gmail.com. Because this is just the first of a many series of citizens' grand juries. As I frequently have said, we have the right, the people have the right to commission their own citizens' grand juries. Justice Scalia found that in a case United States versus Williams in 1992. He said the grand jury does not belong to the three branches of government, to the American people. And we are seeking the indictment, and we will get it, of Joseph Biden, his son Hunter, and his brother James, and there are other Bidens involved as well, and we'll get to them later, for a massive bribery scheme from communist China, from Ukraine, and Russia. Millions of dollars, maybe hundreds, laundered into the accounts of the Biden family. We presented the testimony of Tony Bobulinski, who was the partner for a while before he quit, before he saw the illegality of it with Hunter Biden, that Joe Biden was to get a 10% cut. 10%. You wonder why Joe Biden is a multimillionaire with a number of houses after 47 years as a congressman and as a senator? Simple. He took bribes. In fact, it's not uncommon in Washington, D.C., and this week we presented evidence that Mitch McConnell, the Senate minority leader, the Republican establishment hack through his wife Elaine Chao, also effectively took bribes from communist China. So go to our website, freedomwatchusa.org, and watch and see what we're doing, because we're getting the indictments, not just of the Bidens, but of Mitch McConnell. We're then going to move on to James Comey. He needs to be dealt with. Andrew McCabe, the lovebird, Strucken Page, Obama's and Biden's intelligence czars, Clapper and Brennan, the Obamas, the Clintons again. I already indicted Hillary Clinton years ago, but at that point, we didn't follow through for a lot of different reasons in terms of trial, sentencing, and citizen's arrest. And we're going to hold them all accountable because the government is corrupt to the core. The people know it. We can't believe anything that's said anymore. Look at what's coming out with COVID-19, whether it was the Trump administration or whether it's the Biden administration. We don't get the full truth. Of course, Trump didn't know, so you can't blame him. But we now know. We now know that these vaccines are dangerous. We now know that they can cause blood clots, strokes, whatever. That was obvious. Everybody knew that. But we don't know the full extent of it so far. We don't know what it's going to do over time. And now they want to give it to kids. Are you kidding me? Or pregnant women? That's a bad joke. That's not even a joke at all. That's criminal. We simply don't know. And the government, if you want to call it that, is ramming it down your throat. And now there are restrictions. If you don't get the vaccine and you're out of state, you, for instance, can't go to the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines this year. If you're from California and want to go to Torrey Pines, it's in San Diego, you can get a test. But if you're from out of state, that's actually a violation of interstate commerce. So I'm going to be pursuing a legal action in that regard. But good luck in having a federal judge enforce it. Won't happen. And this is why we need to rise up. And we're not only seeking the indictment of Biden for the bribery, but also the Biden, Kamala Harris, and Maxine Waters, who have stoked violence, who have pitted black against white, white against black, and every group against every other group. In today's world, anyone that disagrees with the left is a racist. And then you have people running around like Rashida Tlaib, that vile, terrorist-connected congresswoman from Michigan. Someone who assaulted my client, Laura Loomer, that case is going to be refiled, who said, even before the Derek Chauvin verdict, that there should no longer be policing, no more incarceration. Of course not. Would a terrorist want you to have policing or to be incarcerated? Rashida Tlaib is a terrorist because she supports terrorist interests. She's supported by them. If you support them, you are one of them. And this is what we've got running our government. This is what is dealing with right now in terms of this country. And the Democrat Party, which has become the party of the devil, the party of the devil. Republican Party is bad enough. It's corrupt. It's worthless. It's dead. It's rolled over. It even stabbed President Trump in the back. But the Democrats are evil. And now they want to have D.C. statehood, so they'll get 2 more senators to ram through everything they want. And the Republicans, don't hold your breath as to whether they can stop them, because they have no stomach for this. And of course, Biden is raising taxes. He's even proposing a 43% capital gains tax, coupled with the other taxes that are being raised. And the Democrats will ram that through budget reconciliation, even without having to remove the filibuster, which they're going to do as well, which will require a simple majority vote for anything they want. And they've got the majority. But yesterday, the stock market tanked. And it tanked because investors know that with a 43% capital gains tax, why are you going to invest in the stock market? You're not going to make any profit. And with higher taxes, you're going to pay it back with higher personal taxes, higher corporate taxes. So this is what is the plan. The plan of the evil Democrats is to destroy the country, to destroy capitalism, to take it down to ground zero. And they have the 3 stooges. They have Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Maxine Waters, and all the rest of them, which we'll call the 3rd stooge, are going to destroy the country and then take it into a socialist, increasingly communist, atheist, pro-Muslim, pro-Marxian Jewish left, pro-feminist, pro-LGBTQ, pro-atheist country. And all the while, whites are going to be fleeing in droves, just like they did South Africa. Apartheid was wrong. It was terribly wrong. In fact, when I was a young lawyer, I worked for a law firm that represented the South African steel industry, the government, ISCOR. And when they came to me, because they knew I was doing all the work when I started a law firm, I refused to represent them, even though it would have been very lucrative and I needed clients on principle. But let me tell you the truth about South Africa. When the African National Congress took over, and that's the equivalent of what we're seeing now in this country with radical blacks and others that are putting them up, and most black people are not this way. When the communists took over the African National Congress, crime became rampant. Property was expropriated for pennies on the dollar. Whites and others fled in droves. Even professional golfers. South Africa's been known for its great golfers, Gary Player and others. They left to go to Florida, or they went to Australia. And that's happening today. Even the head of Fox News, as leftist as he is, Lachlan Murdoch, he got out stage left. He went to Australia. Greg Norman, the golfer who owned millions and millions of dollars of properties here in the United States, left for Australia. That's just two examples. I have friends that have left for Italy. The country is being destroyed. Well, I'm going to stay and fight. And you must fight. And you must rise up. You are not a racist. Whites were not born with a racist gene. Whites emancipated blacks in the Civil War. Whites put into effect affirmative action where, frankly, blacks who aren't even qualified sometimes to go to college can get in. Whites have done a lot for blacks. Blacks have done a lot for whites. Most black people are good people. In fact, really, the only courageous people in this country now are conservative blacks. Most of them are my friends. They'll speak out. They'll stand up to what this is. But the whites are cowering in fear. Take anything you want. Leave me alone. Don't hurt me or my children or my grandchildren. I want to go into retirement. I want to smoke cigars and have scotch or have vodka. Leave me alone. Go play golf. Go to tennis courts. Go wherever. But just leave me alone. Well, you know what? Our founding fathers, they didn't want to be left alone. Our founding fathers knew. And two of them in particular, Jefferson and Washington, would be millionaires, even with inflation, 245 years later. They said, we have to get liberty for purposes of future generations. And now's the time to rise up. So go to our website, support our citizens' grand juries, and participate in our Third Continental Congress on July 4th weekend of this year. I'll be talking about that more in the verdict section. I'll be right back with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Now is time to stand and fight, not to cut out like cowards.
Fearless.
Disclaimer, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
Don't care, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad,
Special prosecutor
very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm back with a great American hero, America's sheriff, my friend, my colleague, and my client, Sheriff Joe Arpaio. I wanted the sheriff to come on this week because it's very important to understand what's been going on with regard to law enforcement, particularly after the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin verdict. There's a lot of confusion out there. The left is moving hard, basically to emasculate, to castrate, for lack of a better word, police departments throughout this country. They want to take our guard down. Rashida Tlaib, that Muslim congressman from Detroit, says we don't need police, we don't need incarceration. Obviously, someone with ties to terrorist interests would believe that, as I said earlier. But there are others in this country who are going along with it. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, people that have taken total control of this country. So I want to get your take on the state of it, Sheriff. Where do you think the country's going in terms of law enforcement? We've got two segments. We have a lot of time. But tee it up, how you analyze the United States of America post George Floyd.
Well, first of all, right now I lost my wife 30 days ago. We've been married 63 years, love of my life, and I mention that because she's been with me through my 57 years in law enforcement, stuck by me, traveled all over the world with me when I was fighting the drug problem, and very, very supportive. Actually, I wrote a book that's out, and it's Sheriff Arpaio, an American legend. My publisher is the one that gave the title. But my wife is mentioned there, various parts of the book, how she helped me in my law enforcement activities. I think back what the wife did for me. Sometimes wives of law enforcement don't get the acknowledgement that they should, having to deal, not just wives, any spouse that's involved with law enforcement. So when I'm thinking now of what's going on, I think of my wife, because I married my wife 1957 in Chicago and met my wife when I was a cop, Metropolitan Police Department, working a tough black beat, and that's how I met my wife. She happened to live in the same apartments that I did, so I met her when I was a cop and married her, and she's helped me make some decisions and supported me, and always one mission she always had was to make sure she made me happy. So I want to talk about all the spouses married to law enforcement, and it's very important, the family. And now, as you asked me that question about how I feel about what's going on today, I always reflect back to the days I was a cop. I joined the Army when the Korean War broke out, and always wanted to be a cop in when I grew up, and got discharged and joined the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department when I was 21. And I remember out of the academy, they sent me to an area in D.C. which is not a very high crime area. And I told the captain, I want a active precinct. So they sent me down to...
Sheriff, I'm really glad that you brought up your wife, because I was going to do that too, but I wanted to give you a chance to lead with that. We're going to be right back, and we'll pick it up on the next segment. But yes, it's very important, because to be a cop, and I've had cops in my family, it becomes a family affair. You need the support. You're out there every single day risking your lives. We're going to be right back with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Stay tuned. Listen intently to what he has to say. It's extremely important.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
Sheriff, continue on about your early experiences of being a police officer in Washington, D.C., one of the roughest cities, by the way, in the United States. I lived there for many, many years. I can tell you there are parts of Washington, D.C. that make the Wild West look like child's play in terms of murder rates. In fact, for a long time, it was the murder capital of the country. And to this day, 80% of homicides in Washington, D.C. remain unsolved. If you want to kill someone, go to Washington, D.C. Obviously, I'm being facetious here. But continue, because this is important to understand your history and how it put everything in perspective in terms of the rest of your life.
Well, I was just thinking, because sometimes, there's nothing wrong with college degrees and all the education, but when people ask me, "Oh, you're so great, how do you do it?" I come up with two explanations. That's life experience. I sure have that, and also common sense. And when I walked the beat in D.C., it was a black beat. I was very aggressive. I was 21 years old. We didn't have video cameras and all that jazz. We had a nightstick, a black sack, black, what they call them, the rubber blackjack, and also a 38, Smith & Wesson 38. And that's how we police. We did community policing way back in those days in our own way. We knew everybody on our beat. They knew who we were, and they respected us, believe it or not. And I locked up more people in that beat of mine than I think the whole precinct put together, because I was 21 years old. The law to me was black and white. But then after 4 years patrolling that beat, I went to Vegas, and I learned a different type of policing in Las Vegas in a squad car, that there is a gray area when you enforce the law. So I kind of changed my attitude somewhat, but something that stuck with me, because I'm very aggressive, always was, no matter what I do, that you should enforce all the laws, and I was very proactive. Today, I don't know. I think we're going to lose that proactive philosophy, because the cops are going to be afraid to do anything. They're afraid to pull a car over. I can go on and on, that they're going to go after the cop when he makes a decision, because most of his politics, we're into a political era right now, and it's affecting law enforcement. It's going to get worse under this Biden administration. It's going to get worse, Larry. So I reflect back how I grew up in a law enforcement area, and then I became a federal agent. So I had the 27 years experience as a federal guy, which most of it was running offices in Turkey and Mexico, you name it. But I was very aggressive. I don't know today. If I was on the streets, I might be a little cautious. I may not be proactive. Why would I stop a car if you look at somebody crooked and a camera goes on, and for political reasons, because certain elements hate law enforcement and they're taking advantage of some shootings and all the propaganda and the fake news and the political people? All they want to do is mess up the cops. Get rid of the cops. And so that's what, we've always had politics in law enforcement. But Larry's gone too far. It's going to affect law enforcement. It's going to affect the safety. It's going to affect the cops, who are, as I said, are going to be afraid to do anything. And you know as well as I do, most of the cases that are solved are over traffic violation. And I can't believe what I hear by some law enforcement officials on these talk shows, including some chiefs, that say we never should have stopped the guy. Just let him go, let him run, and we'll pick him up later on the warrant. So you're going to let these guys go when they run from you. How do you know what's in the car? Is there a dead body in the trunk? Is there drugs in the trunk? Are they wanted? Or are they going to commit a crime after they run from you? That's ridiculous. So we have to let people go and pick them up later. Doesn't make sense. Everybody overreacts, Larry. You know that. I know that. Everybody's overreacting right now. with the situation. But you and I have formed that organization and to help the cops. And I want to thank you for that, because there are not many attorneys that have the guts to take on no matter who for the right cause. And once again, when you do that, you get all the detractors. They call you nuts and everything else, especially the media. So you're in the right place. I'm in the right place. We've been doing this anyway. You have, I have, raising money to help cops and their family. And now more than ever, we and the people that support cops are very critical to fight back and do something to protect our cops. And you know, Larry, everybody makes a mistake. You make mistakes. I make mistakes. But when you do it in good faith, trying to do a job, you should be backed up, not destroyed like they're doing today for those political reasons in certain cities controlled by certain minorities. And their only objective is to get rid of the cops and use some incidents to further their movement geared to the cops and geared to politics, and also to reverse everything that President Trump has done. Now, even today, I know I've been with the president. I've introduced him many, many times. I know he loves the cops. He's always supported the cops. So it's my theory that the Democrats today will do anything to reverse Trump's decisions and his actions. And that's what's happening right now. They hate Trump so much, they're going to throw these cops under the bus and try to have a revolution to determine what they think is right in the criminal justice system. So that's what's sad. And the cops are the ones that are suffering. The people are suffering. They're not getting the law enforcement they should, because the cops are going to be afraid to make any moves because they know they're not going to be backed up. They're trying to pass these laws now in Congress, pass new laws to hurt the cops. That's the way I feel. And yet, I have one thing going for me and that's my age. So we're a great country. We go through these cycles, but we're going to survive. We will survive. So I have mixed emotions about what's going on today. You have guys that are police chiefs and mayors and governors. They all want to put the badge on like they're cops, and they want to make these decisions. And in the process, they're destroying the law enforcement. And so I don't know. It's going to take a little time to get back the way it used to be.
Well, you're right, Sheriff. We will survive if we rise up ourselves. If we sit there and do nothing, we will not survive, in my opinion. And that's why we formed this group, America's Sheriff. We urge people to go to it, americassheriff.org, 2 S's in the middle, americassheriff.org on the website, contribute. We will be defending the cops. And the cops are much maligned these days. There was an incident just the other day where a policeman in Columbus, Ohio, had to shoot a 16-year-old girl that was ready to kill another girl, African Americans, with a knife. And now, of course, the backlash has begun. Rashida Tlaib, Ilham Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the whole lot of them are now condemning the cop for saving the life of the young girl. And this is where we are. My brother was a cop in Philadelphia, and he can tell you that, his brothers, and my brother's not even really conservative. He's middle of the road. He can tell you that his fellow cops, are hesitant to intervene. They just clean up what happens afterwards at this point. He's no longer a cop. He went to law school. But this is unfortunately where we are, and it hurts Black people more than anyone else. And here's a statistic that just won't be told. I turned on the TV after the Derek Chauvin guilty verdict, And I was out in Los Angeles at the time. It was the LATV. And some white young woman comes on and says, we kill more people, cops kill more people in 1 week than countries overseas kill in an entire year. Now, what she fails to recognize is that in these areas where there's this high crime, primarily African-American, obviously you're going to have to be more aggressive. And it's going to happen, unfortunately. These other countries don't have the demographic. It has nothing to do with being black, white, or yellow, or green. It's just a fact. But no one wants to talk about that. And the sad part is that blacks are the ones that suffer most from this, and most black people are not in favor of eliminating the police. But yes, it's being used as a pawn, as a political pawn. So tell us more, Sheriff, about what we hope to accomplish at America's Sheriff, because you are America's toughest sheriff. I'm America's, hopefully, toughest lawyer. And we have a third member on the board, Demetric Penny, who is a black cop from Dallas. He's a tough guy who sued Farrakhan, sued Black Lives Matter, Black Panthers Party, when Farrakhan incited violence resulting in the death of 5 white cops back in 2016 in Dallas, Texas. We remember that massacre. We've got some very brave people here who are not going to roll over to these demagogues on the left. Tell us what we hope to accomplish with America's Sheriff.
Well, let me tell you, you're the lawyer, and I recall there was a 35-year-old female officer regarded a taser and the gun. You know what I'm talking about. That happened a couple of weeks ago. Well, I never seen such a quick indictment in that case. That happened in that case. They indicted the officer in 1 day. You know you don't get indictments that quick. Now, am I right, Larry? Do you get indictments?
No, you're right. No, it's illegal lynching.
I'm not talking about charges. Indictment. Why doesn't someone say the reason that happened? Because they didn't want riots. They didn't want this turmoil. Riots. Or maybe they wanted the riots. It doesn't matter. The point is that poor cop has been sacrificed over politics. That's just one example. Politics. And this is something we have to fight. We have to fight because they're throwing the cops under the bus for political reasons.
And we cannot succumb to being called racist every single time. We have to push back. People have to push back, not to roll over and say, leave me alone. So, the answer here is the Father and the Son will help those that help themselves. And that's exactly what we are doing now. And as I said earlier in the show, before you came on, the most courageous people in this country are conservative African Americans like Demetric Penny, who are standing up to what's going on. But I want to thank you, Sheriff. Tribute to your wife, great lady. She was like Abigail Adams. You can't be great in your life if your wife is not supportive, and yours was, and she was a great person. And you are a great person. So I'm very privileged to be associated with you, and God bless you. And we'll be back with more as this thing evolves at americascheriff.org.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
This is the verdict, ladies and gentlemen. I say it over and over again in my podcast. The Father and the Son help those that help themselves. The title of my book, perhaps the subtitle, is more important than the actual primary title, which is It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. You can get it at all major booksellers online, barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, booksamillion.com. You can get it with a contribution of $50 or more to freedomwatchusa.org, which helps us do our work, and we'll be offering it as well on the americascheriff.org website. But we must rise up. We can't take this sitting down. In the days of my youth, there was Popeye who used to say, the cartoon, "I can't takes it no more." And we cannot, because the ultra-left has assumed control. It's not even the left, ultra-left, it's the left. A total dictatorship, ramming one executive order after another down our throats, raising taxes, opening up the border, allowing people to come in, even kids with COVID-19, with variants that aren't even covered most likely by the vaccines, assuming the vaccines work and aren't dangerous, and that's a big if. So we need to rise up. And we also need to abolish this government and form a new government. And that's why, as we did in 1776, in our Declaration of Independence, it says, when the law, under the laws of nature, nature's God, government no longer represents us, we can abolish our government and form a new government. On July 4th weekend of this year, on July 5th and July 6th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where it all began, my birthplace and the birthplace of liberty, across from Independence Hall to Visitor Center, we're going to convene courageous and very learned people from all walks of life, from all 50 states, to decide when we form a new government and how we do it. Because this government no longer represents us, and we have the right to do it. That's our God-given right. And we're going to be nonviolent. If they come for us, that's their choice. We have the rights of self-defense. But the American people can no longer take the two corrupt political parties, one totally evil, the Democrats, one totally corrupt, the Republicans. We don't have representation. No representation is what existed in the days leading up to our revolution, our first revolution in 1776. The motto was no taxation without representation. It also resulted because our legal system was taken away from us by the king back to London, England. And then when hostilities broke out at Lexington and Concord and in and around New York City, the king came for our guns. Sound familiar? This is what's happening today. And as I've said over and over again, you have to ask yourself this fundamental question. Are we worse off today than we were in 1776? The king was not a socialist. The king was not a communist. The king was not an atheist. He was not a Muslim, a radical Muslim. He was not a member of the Marxian Jewish left. He was not an LGBTQ. He was not a radical black. The fact is, most people in his groups are good people, but the radicals have seized control, and they won't give it up. They'll never give it up. The Democrat Party is now putting into effect a statute which will codify the fraud that resulted in the election of Biden and Harris. It's called H.R. 1. The Democratic Party is now allowing mass migration of immigrants across the border that they think that will vote Democrat to change the demographics of this country. The Democrat Party is now about ready to disarm police departments, as we talked about, so they can do whatever they want and intimidate everybody in society. We must rise up with citizens' grand juries, with our Third Continental Congress. We need to take immunity away from public officials and judges and make it clear they don't have it. They have to play by the same rules. And we need a justice system that will hold them accountable. And we need to make some changes to our Constitution, or additions rather, discrimination on the basis of ideological belief, which is not covered right now. That's what gives the big tech the ability to stranglehold our freedom of speech. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, give what we said this weekend much thought. Rise up. We have to help ourselves. God will not help us if we don't help ourselves. Thank you for listening to me.